So first of all, I'm going to tell you that this took place and was taken in the 1960s. This was taken in South Africa and during the apartheid. So with this additional information, I'm going to give you a few minutes and we'll do the same thing, Vera, to see if the captions have changed, if there's a new caption that comes for the picture. So I'm going to get everybody again to just think about those facts and now write a caption.
So as everybody's writing their caption, I just forgot to mention at the beginning of this session that this session is recorded. So if you don't want to be part of this recording, please don't put on your video or write in the chat. But if you don't mind having your words in the chat recorded, and then feel free to go ahead and participate. Thank you.
Are you getting any new captions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Love has no color.
I like that.
Love over fear. Love knows no color. And reconciliation.
Okay, so are those any more, or that?
A reunion. We just got another one, a reunion. And no boundaries. That seems to be it.
Okay, very, very, very good. So I guess the main message here is, some of these have changed from the first, and then you can get into a discussion as to why. And I'm going to show you the real caption. Just so the real caption is, I love this child, even though she will grow up to treat me like her mother does. And this is a quote from the maid or the nanny. So and now to me, I'm getting some emotion with this picture. And, when emotion is involved in learning, students will tend to learn better. There can be all kinds of discussion about what went on in the apartheid, the segregation of race. Some parallels can be made in what's going on to the U.S. now. So there's all kinds of chance for discussion. And if the teacher has taken the time to find out what is going on in the other courses, what outcomes are other teachers trying to achieve right now? How can we link more than one outcome? So we're reinforcing what someone else is teaching. These kids are able to make connections. So this is what is really important. So for this one particular, English 12, for instance, writing a response, this would have been the original. Now, if the teacher had just given the kids 5 pictures and said, write a response under each picture, well, that's not cross-curricular, even if the picture has to do with something, because there's no learning going on in the other subjects. And please tell me if I'm talking too loud, because I'm in a classroom. Sociology 12, right? They could be taking these possibly at the same time, where one of the outcomes is formulating a hypothesis regarding positive and negative impacts of social stratification. So this could be discussed in English class, and the kids could have more to offer. And they're seeing that one course is not in isolation. Everything is connected. African Studies 11, Civil Rights Movement in Africa versus USA and Canada. Another great way to make a connection to another subject. But my point is that if you do not know the outcomes, if you're working in isolation, then it's very difficult. You can say something, but you have no idea if they've done it like somewhere else, or if they're trying to learn it somewhere else. So this is one of my main points. So for types of cross-curricular teaching and learning, and as I said, I did not do this. I thought I was doing it all the years I was teaching, and it's probably the last 5 years, and maybe since I've been to China, that I realized how cross-curricular teaching and learning really works. This was brought up in the last session in the international schools, is that in many times teaching in China, teachers are in a small office, 2 or 3 teachers, and this is what happened to me. I was in an office with a master English teacher, Debbie Davis Maybe, and I had taught biology for many years. And so we really picked up on each other's outcomes. Like our desks were very close together. And we really were able to do very effective cross-curricular teaching between the English and the biology 11. And we could see the faces of the kids when I would walk in and say something that they just did in English class, and they would say to me, "This is not English class, you know." And I said, "I know that. This is biology class." But there is big connections. So this is the key. So let's take a look at some of the types. So tokenistic, for instance, is a simple class startup. So a lot of people have little motivational startups for their class, but sometimes they're not quite getting to cross-curricular. For instance, I will hold up a battery in biology class and ask them to find the organelle of the cell that might correspond to that particular item. But I'm not teaching them one thing about electricity or the battery or anything like that. So I'm really not teaching anything in another class. I'm making a kind of a connection. But so the tokenistic are kind of weak unless you work on it. And I'm going to show you one here in a minute that I think is cross-curricular. Hierarchical and learning in both subjects, but there's one subject that is dominant. So then we get to multidisciplinary. So this is Debbie and I, when we were in China, basically it was multidisciplinary. Learning was occurring. We were repeating things that were done in English class, and I would do them in biology class, some of the skills. And it was, 2 or more subjects equally. When we get to our final project, I would call it interdisciplinary. So we're connecting and combining 2 subjects very creatively, and you will find that out at the end of this presentation. Opportunistic, student initiated. How many times have students asked a question? Now, does that teacher pick up on that and continue with that idea? And another example that I saw was when the grade 12 students in English 12, they were reading Medicine River. In one of the chapters, the kids were playing a game called Bones. One of the students put up their hand and said, "What is this? What is this game Bones?" Well, it's probably not the question you would expect, from the novel. And the teacher did not know what it was. So, but she did go home and she looked it up. And she found out it had a lot to do with probability. And then she did some digging, into the curriculum outcomes to see which subject, such as Math 11, where they might have done probability, and tied that in. So it can be a reinforcement of something that was learned like another year as well. And that works very well as well. So you've got to look for the opportunities in order to do this. And I'm sure many of you teachers do a really good job at this and probably have very many good suggestions at the end of this session. Now, double focus. So my claim to fame is the science fair. For 30, 40, 35 years of my teaching, basically, my students did a science fair project. They got very good. They were going to Canada-wide competitions, and they were learning a lot of different things by doing their science fair project. I'm ashamed to say that there was not once that I went to another teacher and I said, "Oh, what outcomes do you have that I could implement when I do their biology projects, their science fair project?" Because there's lots of math in there. They do statistics. Of course, there's lots of reading. There's lots of writing, referencing, all kinds of things. Did I ever check? Not once did I check. And like I said, it's just the last 5 years or so that I'm really cluing in to cross-curricular teaching. So let's look at opportunities to use this, and I don't want to do too many since we got a little bit of a late start, and I want to make sure we have time to look at the project at the end, and maybe both of those teachers are here as well, so they will be able to answer some questions. So skill development. Now, skill development was the major area that Debbie and I taught cross-curricularly. So when you think of it, if teachers have to teach the same skill, you know, why not let the kids in on it, that this is the same skill that you're using in another class? And possibly because we have so many outcomes to cover, it's going to save some time as well. Instead of me trying to do that skill differently than the other teacher is, and I know sometimes they'll have to adapt to that when they get to university, I mean different, but when they're young and when they're first in high school, the skill development is a great area to be cross-curricular. Activities, many activities can be, I'll show you an example. And of course, we're going to look at the project-based assessment that was done in 2020 at the end. So ask yourselves what skills need to be learned in your grade level. You'll find I'm kind of gearing towards the science because I was a science teacher. So you have to communicate, collaborate. You can align your teaching. You have to cover the outcomes. But there's no reason why you couldn't change the order that you did the outcomes if you could align with another teacher. So if sound was being done in physics and you were teaching the ear, then those two, you know, would go together very, very well. But again, you have to take the time. And if you're looking at the learning outcomes framework, I mean, it's not a huge document, you know, if you're reading about one particular course. It's a good way to just, you know, get an overview of what these learning outcomes are for another course. So see who you're teaching with, see who your students are what other courses the students are taking or have taken, and look at those. Look at that document. It's very, very valuable document. So in the skill development, the first thing that we did when Debbie and I were in China was the infographic. And I noticed her doing it. I noticed when she marked it, you know, the kids didn't quite get everything that she wanted them to get. So I had a biology project for the students to do, which actually wasn't this one, it was on diseases, but in biology 12. And I said, why don't I use the same? Why don't I do an infographic? This will, you know, help these students develop this skill. And in English, they were trying to learn an alternate way of representing things. In biology, I was more concerned with the content, but the actual skill would be the same. So therefore, this is how we got started with our cross-curricular teaching and learning, and we found out it worked great. So the infographic, we went to annotations, which she was doing in English, I was doing in scientific articles. We actually shared a newspaper. She ordered a newspaper for the English class, and we were so close in proximity. She would say, oh, good article in biology, you know, on cloning. And so I would walk into the same class, the grade 12 class, biology 12, I'd say, get your newspapers out. And they would look at me and say, no, the newspapers are for English class. I go, what? I said, newspapers, you know, can be for any class, get your newspapers out. And they all giggled and laughed, and they just, after a while, they just thought it was great. Doing research papers, you know, we made sure we conferred with each other on any of the referencing, you know, how are we going to do paragraphing and everything, you know, so that again, we're on the same page. We're not having one teacher say something and another teacher saying something else. I said, again, when they get to university, they might have to adapt to that, but they're much older at that point and they have much more experience. And rules. We had great, you know, looking at the spaces with hyphens, where sometimes there's no space, sometimes there is a space. So, you know, we got together on that. We got some good scientific articles and made sure that we had it right and made sure that we were doing it the same. So you can also do lab reports. I mean, really to confer with the other science teachers, do a similar format for the students instead of just working in isolation. Graphing calculator use, scientific posters. Sure, there's lots others. I'm kind of on the scientific side, as you can see. So we'll move along. Okay, so for this activity, I'm going to, again, get you to take a minute. And again, no names are going to be given with any answers. So therefore, what I want you to do is this, with this common activity, I want you to pick the one of those that you think would be the odd one out. Something that would have nothing to do, let's say Beak adaptations is the main one, let's say that. And which one of the other ones should not be there. So I'll get you to type into the chat, and Vera, you can let me know when you get a few answers. No right or wrong.
All right, will do. Just to clarify, we type in one of those four things?
Yeah, one of those four. Well, don't type in the Beaks because that's the main one.
Okay.
Type in one of the other three that you think is the odd one out.
Okay.
But you could do it your way too, I can see. I'm the biology teacher, so I'm looking at the Beaks, but. So yes, so any one of them that you think stands out as being odd, that would be good.
So we have all three of them that are in, people are listing all three of them. Most people are saying polysaccharides or polysaccharide.
Okay. Okay, so like when you're doing this in your you know, class and online, and I guess the other thing I wanted to point out while I'm doing this is that I am not, you know, very advanced in my technology, but any of these things that I'm doing can be very simply done online. And so let's look at and again, when you do the odd one out, there's really no correct answer. But it's to put them in groups, have them discuss. They may even give them a chance to do some actual research on it and come up with their answer in their group. So it's to initiate discussion. And in this particular one, I am trying to be very cross-curricular. So the beak is made of keratin. So keratin is an organic compound, a protein composed of 18 amino acids. And so we are getting into some chemistry and some biology. And we know that they're adapted to the foods they eat. And in the, I guess I'm maybe not doing this one quite correctly. So the polysaccharides are going to, you know what? I think I forgot to change that. So you're probably right that the polysaccharides are the incorrect answers. So I meant to change that. Actually, I meant to change that to the keratin. So therefore, we would have got the other answer. I knew I would make a mistake. Okay, so anyway, let's pretend that one was keratin. We won't do it again. But my main point is that you're going to be using 4 things that are related. And actually, if they think hard, they can look at it at different ways, and they will come up with different answers. So that is the whole point of the whole thing. So I'm sorry about that. So so if thinking keratin is the first one, so Beak is made of keratin, and this is an organic compound, but not a polysaccharide. That's the part I didn't change. It's a protein. So we're drawing in the chemistry, biology, curriculum outcomes. We're talking about Beak adaptations, of course, biology 11, science 10. The drag, I thought, might have been the one that some people would say, but the beaks do have tiny grooves in them for the fluid to flow through, and this helps reduce drag, and so it has to do with velocity. That might be done in physics 11. And the beak growth is important, as actually they monitor beak growth and to figure out the health of the birds. So there's different different ways that you can look at it. And I guess another thing to think about here is that when teachers are actually starting to do curriculum outcomes, cross-curricular activities and things, it is good to start simple, as you can see. And you basically do need to know a lot or do some research on some of the other subjects and some of the other learning outcomes as well. So anyway, I'll move on. Okay, so a project-based assessment. So our schools were basically online since February, and so it became difficult to do, assessments in the ways of tests and exams. So we went more the route of a project-based assessment. So this one, a project-based assessment would be jointly with another teacher and individual evaluation by each teacher, as you'll notice when you look at this project. So no double dipping is what we say. So you're not just doing one project and you're going to split them up and mark them. You each have your own set of your own rubric for marking your project, and the other teacher has their rubric, and you will see that. So again, it's something that some teachers will not quite get at first. Okay, so this was a joint project with multiple products, pre-calculus 11 and biology 11. So for a quick overview, it was a final assessment. So multiple outcomes were assessed in biology and pre-calculus. The units that were assessed in biology: taxonomy, human body systems. So a digital poster was created using Desmos. This for the biology part, and this was an individual assessment, which is always good. And then there was a group assessment as well. And the teacher posed a problem to the students, and it had to do with the online teaching, so that we were in a situation with a very iffy internet. And so basically what would happen and how would people be able to learn with, if the internet went down. So she was getting them to make resource material that could be used so they could learn a unit or a particular topic at home and at some point where there may not be access to the internet. And of course, we get that a lot in Nova Scotia when we were also off. There were students that could not get access to internet. And this teacher is actually willing to share some of these with biology 11 teachers in Nova Scotia. So the pre-calculus assessment was based on skills in pre-calculus, which I'll get into in a minute. So he was basically looking at the use of the app Desmos, and he was looking at some other things, as I will let you know in a second. Okay, so some of the learning outcomes, which is very important. The first thing, you want to set the outcomes, but you also want to make sure the students are clear. Sometimes even a little flow chart or something like that. So you've got to make sure the students also understand so that they will make the connections. So if, so that they'll know that they're doing this project for both courses. So another outcome: describe the anatomy and physiology of representative organism from each kingdom. Well, I taught biology for a long time. I always found that a very difficult one and a time-consuming one. And I think this is a great idea. Another outcome: explain how different plant and animal systems maintain homeostasis. Identify and describe the role of chemicals used, including elements, compounds, biochemicals. So we're into more outcomes. So let's take a look at, I'll put this one on the screen. And this represents the project directions or mechanics in the pre-calculus, and also the rubric. So you can be having a look at that. So Pierre Rosas and for this integrated project between biology and pre-cal. So in pre-cal, the Desmo app is used in regular basis in their lessons in graphing linear, quadratic, inverse, reciprocal, and radical equations. So Pear first taught them these skills using the table of values, intercept method, or slope intercept method. So once they know the basics, then he taught them, to integrate the technology using the TI-84 or the Desmos app. And for anyone not familiar with Desmos, there was a presentation on Desmos, which was done at 9 o'clock this morning, and you will be able to access the taped version of that. So one activity that he did was to draw a graph of a famous place, structure, object found in China using Desmos. And so what happened, we have the biology part of it. And what happened is Wilma saw this. Actually, Wilma and Piao they have taught together for years before they came to China. So Wilma saw the colorful graphs and suggested the cross-curricular project. So for graph the organs and species using the equations from the family of quadratics, the conic sections, use equations of circle, parabola, hyperbola. So they used understanding by design format to design their project. They have different mechanics and different rubrics, as you can see. So it's really important to have the different rubrics and to do your own assessment on the project and have your own. You are accessing one part of the project is actually cross-curricular, where you're really using exactly the same for both projects. So these are sample graphs and equations. So for the calculus, pre-calculus 11 teacher, he was looking for the equations and the sketches. And this is the part that he assessed, but he also helped Wilma assessing the diagrams as well that went on the posters that she received. So this was one part, and this would be one of the products for the pre-calculus. Now for the biology products, using the same app, they were to make posters. And if I just go back for a minute, you'll notice you can't see them very well, but these are actually the same pictures that are now coming through and being used on the posters. So where we have the liver, we have the paramecium, and we have a poster on the stomach. So these are samples of the products that's part of her project, and this was a very cross-curricular part because they were using the same app that they used in pre-calculus. So for the sample learning materials, and I have looked, at these in detail, and these were multiple pages. So here we're just picking out a couple pages to show you some of the things. Remember, they were really supposed to be making a learning tool that could be used by students if they didn't have access to the internet for some reason, that they could somehow get these packages and they could do some studying on their own. And so they were supposed to be interactive, and they were supposed to have some, pre-tests, post-tests, things like that. There's a Jeopardy game in that one. And this is some other samples of pages with the pre-test and the post-test. And here's another sample. So I was very impressed by the products that were produced for this project, the thinking and everything that would have to go into this, the creativity. And like I said, the cross-curricular part is having to make connections between math and biology. So it is really, really great. On this one, we see a video. And I just wanted to show you the quality of the completed diagram. So this was a very good one on the heart. And so pair would help with the assessment to make sure the angles and things were correct on the diagrams that were produced, for the biology poster as well. So first, in summary, so taking a new pedagogical approach involving 2 or more subjects is very beneficial. So the context becomes meaningful for them, more memorable, things are easier and more fun. The students are able to use similar skills in different subjects. They're not working in isolation. Students can appreciate the context of their learning more, and they can apply it to the world. Language, like I said, English is a great way to do this, and one I didn't mention before was possibly using the root words, for instance, study of root words, and going along with the biology teacher or the chemistry teacher, with root words and other things like that. The teacher in Shenyang, she had everybody wear orange t-shirts for Orange T-shirt Day, and so did some cross-curricular work with global geography. So all kinds of ideas there, and so language becomes more universal and math more understandable if you're actually applying it in new situations. But in summary, what do the teachers need to do? First of all, they need to be motivated. You basically need to be motivated to do this because it is going to take some time. At first, it will take some time, and you will experiment. You'll find things that work really well. You'll find things that maybe don't. But you have to be motivated to try. You have to be self-confident. If you're going to be teaching in a cross-curricular way, you could have a question on something that you said that might have to do with a different subject that you're not feeling, very knowledgeable about. So you do have to also be self-confident. That will come. Start with something simple, and the self-confidence will come. And when you see the results, like I did, then you will become more motivated to do it. Be willing to develop the expertise over time again. So be willing to make a mistake. Be willing to mess up like I did earlier. So anyway, and like I say, start with some simple things and try to find some time to talk, whether it's over a coffee, at the lunch table, anywhere that you have time. I think you will find it very rewarding. And you have to support and reinforce each other too. So if you don't know as much about one topic, well, talk to that teacher. And you have to be supportive of each other. Work together. These are very trying times in education. And teachers do need to come together and not have segregation. So this is the end of the presentation. And just to say, for instructions on Desmos, then please watch Eric Lee. And you can access this later. And for more samples of projects, I just have my email there. If you actually want to get some of these learning packages, then that Ms. Wilma has, then you can contact me and I will put you through to her. So I'd like to thank you very, very much for your attention. Hope everybody's still there. And I'd like you to type in questions, or if you have some good ideas, if you want to share something that you did that was cross-curricular, we would love to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaye. Thank you so much for this excellent overview of cross-curricular teaching, along with an in-depth study of a certain project. Clearly, it was beneficial to everyone involved, and obviously the students were engaged with, judging by the quality of those products at the end. Are there any questions? We do have some minutes, quite a few minutes left, actually, almost 10 minutes left, if people would like to ask questions.
Yes, and the two teachers, Pierre and Wilma, are both here. So if there's particular questions on the project, I can address, they can handle those questions.
Will these slides be posted on the slide deck for SLA 2020?
I guess I can answer that, Vera. Yes,
Sure.
they will be. Okay.
Are there any other questions about this project, or about cross-curricular teaching in general, or about teaching in China? Because this was certainly the context for this was teaching in China, and
Yeah,
perhaps a little different, and online, right, Gaye?
Yeah, it's online and teaching in China. And in China, I will add that it is a little easier because we are teaching the same students, at least in my school. So there would be 3 grade 12 classes, and so all the teachers would be teaching the same people. Now, when you in Nova Scotia, that doesn't always happen, obviously. But you might have the bulk of your students, like if you're teaching biology, the bulk of them may be also taking chemistry or taking physics, and they're all taking English. So it does become harder, I believe, in Nova Scotia. So you have to work a little harder to achieve it. It's great in elementary school because they, again, teach the same students.
Absolutely, and I think elementary teachers often have more.
Yeah, it seems they seem to work together very well, the elementary teachers.
Yes, and the focus on high school today is really helpful, I think, for our teachers in international schools, but also if there are any participants from Nova Scotia schools, the same principles apply. So are there any, I don't see any questions,
Okay.
any more questions on the chat.
Okay.
So I just
nothing to share. I wouldn't mind if somebody wanted to share an idea as well, if anyone had something, but thank you for listening.